Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jess. This is Zoe. We're in the same room. They are Nori. She is Janet. She is Mariette. And we are back with another book club meeting. We are here for November's book club pick, which is The Binding by Bridget Collins. And I think this is going to be a really interesting, because we're all over the shop with our ratings. So this could be really fun.
Janet.
Oh. I'm jealous of Janet's.
Oh.
Very
I'm not
fun.
It's the makeup. It's making a.
I need a shelf right now just to have it here.
I'm so jealous.
Can we also look at this bit, like everything, every
Stop
angle?
it. Stop it.
You know,
Anyway.
the power I felt going to work every day reading this on the tram, and I just pull it out of my book, on my bag, and be like, yeah, I'm reading this. It's not Russian. But...
Mariette, who is going to be hosting this because it's her book club pick. So, yes, take it away, my darling.
Everyone's read the book. I'm very ill prepared today. I'm going to tell you all that now. So I wanted to start with a different question because I think we all knew. I've read it before, but did
you want to do ratings first?
No, I want to do something else first and then go into ratings. Okay, so
plot twist.
We all knew. I mean, I've read it beforehand, but you all had heard about this book before I chose it. So before we go on to ratings and your first thoughts about it, I want to know your unfounded thoughts about it when you first heard about the book before you even read it. What did you think the book was going to be about, and did it meet those expectations?
Oh, that's a good question.
So I don't want ratings yet. That comes after. I want.
Is this knowing the blurb or without reading the blurb?
Oh, that's a good point.
Just before you read it, before you read the first chapter or something, what did you think about it? So if you read the blurb or if you'd heard about it before reading the blurb, just that kind of stuff. So I don't know who wants to start, but yeah.
Should we go around? So me, Zoe, Nori, Mariette,
sure.
Or whatever. I had no idea going into this. I went in almost completely blind. I only read the synopsis, and I think the synopsis gives very little away. It gives barely anything away. It gives, I'd say, a couple of percent of the plot away, whereas most books will give you 10 to 25, and they'll give you an idea of the big inciting event. I only knew the cover was pretty. I'm not gonna lie, and the fact that it was a book about books, and I was intrigued. So that's kind of Mariette was sneezing.
Oh right.
that's kind of all I really thought about. I was I think it'll be at least a 4-star. I think it'll be really interesting, turn of the century style. I knew it was historical fiction / fantasy. Which is something I find a genre I'm finding really, really interesting, the thought of that. So yeah, I went in almost completely blind, and I really liked that I did that. Zoe?
I'd had it on my radar for a while because Beth pal Nell had read it, and she was raving about it and kept going on me to read it, but she didn't really give much away. She just kept saying, you'll really enjoy it. And I said, okay. And obviously then when Mariette suggested it, my impression was that it was going to be about a craft, and it was going to be quite an antiquing kind of a book that was going to be quite intricate and I can't think of the word I'm looking for. Kind of old and traditional, and that was kind of where my interpretation of it went. Was a big plot twist of whatever, another journey, self-discovery, something like that. So yeah, it was an interesting read from that perspective, because I think when someone's hyped it up for so long as well, you've always got a preconceived idea because you think, oh, this person loved it, so, and they're saying I'm going to love it, so then you're like, what is it that I like that they're thinking I'm going to like it? So you kind of build up an idea in that regard. So yeah, I hadn't gone in blind, but I hadn't read it or anything, but I'd heard such good things about it, and everyone was raving, and I was looking forward to reading it.
Yeah, Mariette hyped it up to me as well. So yeah.
I mean, everyone was hyping it up. It's all right, I don't apologize.
Sorry.
I go.
Yeah.
You are.
So I am me, and that is a burden I must carry. But I was sort of, because after I bought this book, because I have a little side business where once I finish a book, if it's not like 5 stars, keep it forever, yay type book for me, which technically I have kept this one on my Audible, but I wrap them up, put a synopsis on, and sell them on this little stall that I have at the place I work at. So after I bought this book, I found a copy of it in a charity shop for like £1. So I went, well, I'm going to be reading this book anyway, so I'll get this one as well, wrap it up. So I read sort of the blurb and a synopsis. So my brain was like, oh yeah, it's going to be a lot more fantasy. It's like, I thought there would be a lot more of, it's on the blurb, so I think I'm allowed to say it. Like when Emmett discovers his own book, I thought there would be more there of him going, do I read it? Do I not read it? Mm-hmm. All that sort of jazz.
Yeah.
And I wasn't expecting what I got, and I'm very pleased with what I got. Because I think I would have found the story in my head a lot more. In my head, it was a lot more young adult, the story I was making for it. And a little more boring. So I'm very glad with what I got when I actually got round to it, and I do highly recommend the Audible audiobook of it.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
Janet?
I'm really trying to think back to when I got this book. I think my mum might have bought it for me as a present, maybe when I got back from Thailand. So I've had it for a while, so I don't really know what my initial thoughts were. And I'm not going to lie, rereading the blurb just now, I don't think I read it before I started reading it in November. So I kind of went in not really blind, but like with no expectations, I guess. I kind of knew it was about books. And he has this craft of binding, and he's like, oh, okay, hidden talent, cool, but that was kind of it, really. I didn't really know. I didn't have any expectations. I knew people said it was good. Like, I've seen a lot of people talking about it. A lot of friends of mine have read it. And it definitely, I think, like I wouldn't say everyone, but some people have said already, like, it didn't go down the route that they'd expected. And that's the same for me. It wasn't what I'd expected, but I wouldn't say that was a bad thing either. But yeah, definitely loved the second part the most. I thought that was the best. I thought it was all good, but yeah, it was very, I don't want to go and spoil it, so I'm just going to say it's interesting, which is a really boring word to use. But
I do slightly remember something else. I thought it was going to be like, because I thought it was going to be like, I'm going to be an apprentice. Hooray! I'm going to go be an apprentice. It's like, no. Yeah. But that's what it was in my head. Again, this version way better than the one in my head.
Yeah. My turn, I guess. I first listened to this book on Audible, and it was a very long time ago now. But I think I was not trying to use up some credits, but I was just trying to find something interesting to read on Audible. So I read the blurb, thought it sounded interesting. Obviously, you can see the book cover on Audible, and then you get the sample bit. I very much enjoyed the man's voice.
It's stunning.
And I think that's what made me pick it. So I had no idea what I was going into when I first read it, to be honest. I think I was just looking for something vaguely interesting at the time. But yeah, as you said, it's not the story you would expect it to be, which is what I like about it. And yeah, that's pretty much all I had to say. I was more interested in everyone else's, to be honest. So star ratings, and now you've read it, what you think about it. So same order as last time, I guess.
Yeah. 5 stars. I freaking loved it. Oh my god. Like, I admit, like, the first 162 pages. So the first part is a lot slower than the rest of it. So like that potentially was keeping it at a 4-star for me initially. The fact that the first 160 pages were a bit slower, but then part 2 and part 3 just went straight up to like 5-star for me. And the fact that I was listening to the audio, but like you say, Mariette, the guy's voice is beautiful. He's got this really soft Yorkshire accent. It's just,
I listened to the voice note you sent on there.
Yeah, it feels really like wrapped up in a blanket with a hot cocoa. It's really comforting.
Yeah.
and I absolutely adored the direction that this went in. I'm not going to say the direction that it goes in, because I think that's spoiler territory. So I think if we leave that out of it, because I had no idea that this is where it was going to go, and I absolutely adored it. I want to reread this again already. Like,
Shock.
I am in such a bad book hangover because of this book, and I haven't experienced a book hangover this bad this year. And I've reread books multiple times. But I don't think I can reread it just yet because it broke me. And I'm talking, if people have read it and know about it, they both die at the end, level of breaking me. For altogether different reasons. Just
I think that's a book title,
Yeah.
not a spoiler for the end of this book.
No. They both die at the end by Adam Silvera. Literally what it says on the tin. They both die at the end. And it's just heartbreaking. This broke me on a completely different level, but to the same amount. It's beautifully written. The characters are amazing. I felt so connected to them and the struggles that they go through. And I love the craft of binding and what that does. And it's a very, I put it in my review, it's a very human tale about memories and living with like the good and the bad memories and finding who you are and things like that. And I just felt it was very atmospheric as well in the writing. So yeah, I think this has gone in as top 5 at least, potentially my favorite read of 2021.
Oh.
So
Good
I
statement.
absolutely adored it. I want more. This is my issue. I want a sequel, but I don't think that's going to happen because it's a beautiful standalone. But if she did write, say, a short story follow-up or a full-on sequel, I will be there in an instant. So yeah, I absolutely adored this. This tops like Heartstopper and Carry On and all those other stuff as well. I
Wow.
loved it.
What a
I
statement.
made you read it. Oh, I'm proud.
I absolutely adored it. Zoe.
Way to rain on the parade.
Yeah, I'm ready for this. Let me get a cup of tea.
What style of books that you normally gravitate towards?
I gave it 3. I was edging 3.5. That's not to say I didn't like it. I did like it, but it just took such a directional shift, and I was so anticipating of completely different narrative, something that I was quite excited for. The way that the blurb set it up, I was fully expecting something else, and so when it shifted so drastically into the main narrative, I was completely kind of knocked, and I was like, this is not what I was setting out for. And not that it's like bad, but I think the first part was a little bit slow, but I think, I don't know, I suppose
that's what you signed on for.
Yeah, and I just think the whole build up of this book, I was fully expecting it to be about I mean, I don't want to say too much in the non-spoiler zone, but I was expecting it to be about this art of binding and this beautiful charismatic way of living in an old cottage on the moors, and him kind of finding himself, because he's built up at the beginning to be so broken down. And I thought this is going to be a really amazing story about a craft and a very kind of imagery of a dusty apprentice workshop, and he's going to learn this and change the minds of and the impression that people have got of binding. And it just let me down a little bit, I think. And I think for me it went on too long as well. By the end of the third part, I was kind of bored of the characters. I think they were starting to annoy me a little bit. But that being said, it was such a well-written book, and the idea of, I mean, again, without doing spoilers, the idea of what it is about and the concept of binding, that's really very clever, and that's very magical in itself. And you do feel a lot for the characters as well, so I think that says a lot about a writer, that you can really find an in-depth connection to a character in a sense, so you can see a lot of layers towards them. So while it wasn't necessarily for me, because I still really liked it, but it just wasn't what I wanted it to be. And during, like, especially the whole second part, I kept waiting for it to go back to what I expected, and Emmett and his journey. And so I think the directional shift was too much for me, and I think it just changed the dynamic of my enjoyment, because it wasn't what I was hoping it to be. And I was like, oh, okay. But I did still really like it. So I was taught, I originally gave it 4, and then I was like, but I think I'm lying to myself. So I'm going to give it 3, but anywhere between 3.5, because that's not taken away from the fact that it's a very well written book, and it is a very good story, and quite powerful. Yeah, I mean, it took away from what I was expecting, I think, and what I was hoping for. But that's me.
No, Nori?
I will branch out later.
Hearing what Zoe was saying, it's actually making me think I want to change my rating. Because I felt the exact same way, because I adored the first bit. And then when it shifted, it was like 5 stars to the first bit, and I was like, oh, I love this. But when it shifted into the second bit, it went down to like 3 stars, but then it went back up to 5 stars by the end of it. And then it went down again when it shifted again. Then it went back up. I was like, but because of all that shifting, I might have to take it down from like a 5-star to a 4. Just because, like, realizing that it's like, oh yeah, it's like, and I think I'm putting too much, like, I love it too much because of certain reasons, but not because of like how it flowed as a whole. Because I really wanted to, like, because hearing you say about like him changing the prejudice around binding and stuff, it's like, now thinking of that, it's like, I wish he'd gone into that a bit more.
Yeah.
And also, there's certain things in the book that I wanted solving, which weren't, and I think thinking about it now, it's not a 5, it's a 4.
That's fair enough.
It's still very good.
Yeah, to be fair, it takes a lot for me to give it
still
5 stars, so 4 is high.
It's still really good.
Yeah. And it was 3.5.
The guy's voice, 5 stars.
Wow, I'm really sorry, Bridget. I just lost you.
Except that one chapter. You're probably, like, Jess, you know the chapter I'm thinking of.
No, there's a lot of chapters.
There's one chapter in the second bit where I'm like, I was very glad I listened to it before I got in the car with my sister.
We're all just like, yeah. Right at the end of the second part.
Near it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I can't remember exactly where it is or what they say, but I have an idea.
Hang on, I think I've got it tabbed.
Not to be listened to in front of other people.
I think I've got it tabbed.
Yeah.
The four-legged friend.
Oh, wait, what?
Oh.
Oh no, I listened to that in the car with my sister. It's about. It's
spoiler section.
Oh, I get it for Nori. I know what bit they're talking about.
Text it to me.
Janet, while they're trying to figure that out, do you want to do your star rating?
Yeah, so I'm still, I don't really know exactly. It's somewhere between a 3.5 and a 4, but I think I'm leaning more towards 3.5. In response to your message, that's what I was thinking of. But yeah, so maybe 3.5, because taking a different angle, I actually really enjoyed the second part because I think the first part was too slow for me and I was kind of bored. I think if there was more going on, if we actually saw him learning about the binding and stuff, rather than just being like, oh, I've been here a month and I've done these things, and we don't really see it as much. Whereas in the second part, like, there's just more going on and I like that more. So I think that's why I'm kind of like, and yeah, the third part was all right as well, but I didn't love it as much, I guess, as the rest of it. It was fine, but yeah. So I think that's kind of why I'm like, maybe 3.5 would be my rating. But yeah, I just think, like, as much as I love the writing, and I'm kind of in two minds, because I like that it wasn't what I expected, but kind of like everyone else said, it was so different to what I expected in a way, even though I didn't have that many expectations going into it. Okay, yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah.
How did we forget about that bit? Yeah, I'm
We
kind
will
of like,
definitely be talking about that bit in a minute.
yeah, but I feel like it wasn't exactly like where I thought it was going to go, but then at the same time, there are a lot of things that happened which were kind of predictable, and I guess that they were going to happen, and I was kind of like, oh, okay, well, fine. Okay. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know how I feel about the ending, but we'll get into that. I have very mixed opinions.
Yeah, in the spoiler zone.
Yeah.
So,
Mariette, what was yours?
So I gave it somewhere between like a 4 and a 4.5. I didn't enjoy it as much as books that I've given 5 stars to in the past, but most of the reasons that Janet said, where I found the first part just too slow, and the ending, although it was a nice ending, like to put a bow on it, wasn't quite as satisfying as I wanted it to be. So because for those reasons, like it dropped down the 0.5 star. But yeah, I very much enjoyed it as a book. I liked the idea of binding. Well, I don't the binding, what it is, how it works, and things like that. I think I like the majority of the characters in it. I think me and Jess were talking about this the other night. You even feel sorry for the villains in it in some places and things like that, and what happens to them. So I think it's a very good book. I love the writing style. It's like properly my kind of writing styles, with the magical kind of mystical kind of way of doing it in the different parts, and intriguing and things like that. So yeah. So it's a very, very good book. There are just a few parts to it that mean that personally for me it's not 5 stars. And that's the last thing I had for spoiler free, because it's a very hard book to talk about without saying spoilers.
Let's
get into this.
You can't really talk about this book without spoilers.
Yeah, it's hard to. Yeah, there's not a lot you can.
There's so little on the blurb, on the synopsis, that you really cannot not go into spoilers. So for anyone watching this back, we are now into the spoiler zone. So the spoiler zone. So if you haven't read this book, would recommend it. It is very well written, as we've also said. So go and go and check it out. Beautiful world building.
Yeah,
amazing
yeah.
characters.
Very interesting concept.
Very, very interesting concept.
I think of an adjective. Interesting.
So yeah, go and read it. But we are now going to talk spoilers. So, Mariette.
I don't really have any questions for this part, I'll be honest. As I said, I'm ill prepared. Unlike Starless, where I find it very easy to pick out like topics and questions and things, because of this book and how it is, it's much more difficult to pick out topics and things. I kind of wanted to talk about the 3 different sections and how you felt about each section, and definitely the shift in voice in part 3, how you felt about that. So I guess like it's more of a topic area than a question. So yeah.
On the topic of the shift in voice, I also like the shift in tense.
It shifts tense, doesn't it?
From first person past tense to first person present tense.
Yeah, I think so.
And it's first person present tense when it's from Lucian, but when it's from Emmett's point of view, and even from his past, it's first person past tense. And I really, really, I don't know why that was done, but I really liked
quite effective, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've read a lot more this year. I never read first person present tense before this year, so it's I've read quite a few this year that have been like that, and I think it's a really effective way of telling, especially a romance. I think it's a very effective way of doing it, like present tense. So I really, really like the voice shift. I really love the whole romance as well. Like that for me is why it's a 5 star. Loved I'm not usually a fan of the miscommunication trope. Like I don't hate it. I'm not a fan of it. I'm kind of in the middle. But this was done so well because there was a legit reason why they were miscommunicating. They've both been bound and they've both forgotten everything. So I found it really, really interesting, especially in that third part when Emmett has remembered and Lucian has no idea what's going on. And I was just there like, my poor beans. And then literally, Mariette and I were messaging back and forth, and it's just like, oh my god.
Yeah, I'm just going through my conversation with Janet, trying to remember my points.
I think literally, I messaged Mariette going, in box chat, my dude, I just finished finding my heart. Oh my god. So yeah.
I just got back from watching Heather's live. Literally walked through the door of my flat, checked my phone after my walk back, and the message had popped up, and I was like, well then.
But yeah, I loved the romance and how you saw it like develop, and it was enemies to friends to lovers. And Silver's like that little bit of a rift between them, and enemies to lovers is my trope, man. I love it. And enemies to lovers and best friends to lovers are two tropes that I adore. I love those tropes.
Really?
And especially when they're you wouldn't know, would you? Shocker. But yeah, I absolutely loved how it was handled in this story as well. How their relationship did develop from not trusting him to trusting him, and then the difficulty that they both still faced, and then the hiding the relationship was heartbreaking. And yeah, that's my 2 cents.
In the second half, I just kept yelling the word "gay" every so. It's like why are you not seeing this? It's gay. It's like he doesn't seem to be doing this. It's like he seems just to like hang around loads, but he's not like said anything about wanting to marry my sister. It's like he's not fully exposed. It's like because gay, all the gay. Also, the amount of times I was in my car and I yelled at the audiobook, I almost crashed. Like, it was during the first section when, like, we're in the spoiler zone. When Seraph dies, I almost crashed my car.
R.I.P. That was so unnecessary.
It's like, I'm 1,000% convinced that de Havilland killed her, and he faces no real retribution for this. Nothing, and I'm like, well, he does, but he doesn't face it for that.
No, you're right.
He faces it for like his other crimes. But I'm like, come on, please confirm this and have someone punch him in the face, please. I wanted that to be wrapped up in a nice bow because I loved Seraph. She was like just my favourite.
I think that's part of the issue I have with the book a little bit, is that whole thing with Seraph. Like, she's completely forgotten about, and no one talks about her ever again as soon as she died. It's like, well,
and there's also the mention of her sister as well, or her master.
Yeah, I feel like whose sister?
Or Starless. I don't know whether it was a sister or
her pal.
Oh
yeah.
They were supposed to go and see, but she never
This
gets.
is my problem with it. Okay, like the back of it. Excuse me, honey, it says Emma
we need a prequel.
Yes, we do. It's so like. His job is to handcraft beautiful books, and within each to capture. But it's not. That's what I mean. It's set up as in he's this apprentice. That's the whole point. He's learning this craft. He's learning this trade, and he's making these books. But he doesn't. All you ever hear about is he's in there for a month. He never gets to learn the thing. He's like, when am I going to learn this? And she's like, and then but he never does. And then
even later on, even when he goes with de Havilland, he still doesn't really do anything. He binds one person, and that's it.
Yeah, but it's not even like he doesn't even know how to do it, does he? He's like,
exactly.
I can't do that. Yeah, and I found it frustrating because what did I say to you, Janet? I was so invested in the little cottage in the moors with an old binder, and he was going to become this fantastic binder that changed the way binders are viewed, and she'd watch on like a proud mother figure that he lost when he did Hanky Solution. Like, it's just so, I think, because I love that kind of vibe of medieval trade, like that whole, I can't, like an old tavern village kind of thing, you know, that sort of vibe is, I just adore it, like the whole medieval thing. And so for me, I just had this proper idea that, because it was like, he's this apprentice, okay, so he's going to go and learn this beautiful trade, and he's going to be a natural at it. This is why he's had this fever, and she's going to be his complete guide in the whole thing, and he's going to learn this amazing thing, and he's going to learn everything about himself, and he's going to be this beautiful binder, and we're going to hear about these amazing books that he does and these journey he takes. He's so scared of the room, and then what's going to happen in the room, and it built it up in that first part that he was going to become something really special, and he was going to learn this amazing thing, and it was going to be about that. So then when but he never really learned it. He was always like doing the same thing over and over and over, and getting frustrated with Seraph that he never got to learn anything. She then is murdered, let's be real. And she's gone, and he never learns anything. And he's like, I'm going to go and be an apprentice, but he doesn't even do that. He spends one night at de Havilland's place where he's treated appallingly, and then he suddenly doesn't. Thank you. It just doesn't. It didn't follow what I was. It just felt like it was just too much of a shift from what it should have been. I don't know. It just felt like he.
I was
And
talking
then all
to
of a sudden he's like, I'm the binder, it's who I am. It's like, well, hardly. You've learned how to put some pages together for a month.
I was
I
talking
don't
to
know.
an
I think that's where it
friend.
lost me.
Yeah,
It
my
lost
friend
me.
was saying she felt it was going to be more sinister, and she didn't explain why, but I think I'd have to talk to her more about it. But I think for me, as soon as Sarah dies, gets murdered, whatever it is, I thought, okay, he's going to figure out that de Havilland's the big bad guy, and on the side, there's going to be this thing with Lucian, because I think that he'd already come and gone, Lucian, at this point.
Yeah.
And it was obvious from the beginning, like they knew each other, but they didn't know that they knew. Well, Emmett didn't know that he knew, So I was like, okay, well, that's going to be a thing. They're probably going to help each other, and there we are. Problem solved. He's going to inherit this little cottage and be a binder, and there we are.
I wanted to be a binder in that cottage, like when he says, like, it's my bindery and I have to leave it. It's like, no, go back to the lovely cottage.
Yeah.
Also, like,
it lost its way.
I really wish there was a scene from his perspective of, like, him, for the first person he actually bound. I wanted him to make the book. Because it sort of mentioned that he gave specific instructions to people who make the outsides of the books in de Havilland's place, because you don't do it yourself, you get these people to do it, and you just go and go, boop, do, done. Which is the mime for binding someone. But, like, I wanted, like, a scene or something of maybe, like, Lucian going and, like, seeing, like, Emmett, like, making a book, and sort of him go, what? And him going to talk to de Havilland about something, and then him leaving, and sort of like, and then later on you're seeing this book delivered, and it's been made by Emmett. Also, I really want to make my own books. That's what this book made me want to do. I want to, like, cut the things and glue the stuff and tie it all together and go, ta-da.
I think there's just so many subplots and different things. Like, I mean, obviously the love story is massive, and that's great.
2/3 of the book.
It's 2/3 of the book. But I mean, at the back it says, and then he goes in one day and finds this book. Well, he doesn't find the book, does he? Someone gets it out and it
literally goes
and immediately blows it.
And then it just, and I said, okay, well that's, and then I think then the subplot of, like, with Lucian and his marriage, and then his disgusting dad, and, like, that side of things and what he did,
and his disgusting uncle,
and it's like, do you know what I mean? It was just so many other things going on. It completely took away from this art of binding that I thought it just sounded like the book was going to be about. And then he says he goes and does this one binding of Nell, and nothing really comes from it. I don't know. It just seemed like it suddenly became such a side story.
Yeah,
it was definitely.
I agree with you there, Zoe, because, like, as you said, it is like a side thing. It seems to only function to teach us how, when someone's been bound, you can't discuss what they've been bound with them. That seemed to be its only function, instead of showing he could bind and he is a binder. Its only function did seem to just be, well, look, now when you talk to Nell about what Darnay did to her, she won't be able to understand you at all. It just seemed to prove as a lesson.
We were talking about this last night and saying that the title, The Binding, isn't necessarily referencing the craft itself. It's referencing the binding of Lucian and Emmett.
I said that to Jan. I was like, because you specifically say it's actually about binding it, so it's about a specific binding.
I think it's quite a good, not trick, but it's quite a good red herring, the title, in that it does trick you into thinking that it's about something else. And I mean, if you go into it expecting, like, a book about a craft and everything, it can come off as, like you say, it's a 3 stars. And But for me, like, reading a title like that and thinking, oh, it's going to be this, oh no, wait, it's about this, that just gives it another layer, and that's why I think I like it so much, because there are so many layers to unpack.
It does sort of remind me of, like, here's the pub, but like a Russian nesting doll of stories. Like, there's this story, and I really like it. It's really pretty. Then I open it up, and it's like, oh, there's a whole different story inside here. Where did this story come from? Open that up, another story. What? But, like, because you couldn't fit, like, it sort of all fit together in a certain way. But, like, truly think about it, it does feel like 3 different books. Sort of, like, slightly, like, this is probably not what I have, but, like, slightly in some points feels like, well, I've had these 3 sort of story ideas going on. Let's just smush them all together and write that.
Yeah,
sort of
like
felt a little like
yeah,
that
they'd
at
be a
some
gay
point.
romance.
So she had so many ideas going in one. She's
Like,
like, how do I put them
the
all
gay
together?
romance,
Yeah.
There's star-crossed lovers, there's the craft, like this ancient craft and this
Family trust.
turn of the century thing,
Yeah.
and social expectations and norms.
Yeah,
and
there's
that.
so much going on. I just,
So much.
and I think I think obviously 'cause everyone's talking about like a prequel and sequel, we never kind of get a roundup of what happens with his family, and they're just suddenly not part of it.
Yeah.
And with the puppy, whose awful name.
Yeah.
That it's just like everything. Some of it just didn't tie up. It was like, okay, well, there seems to be so much relevance about this puppy, and then it's just not. R.I.P.
I
Yeah.
don't appreciate the fact that Lucian never actually says "I love
This
you."
really bothers her.
It really bothers me. The fact that Lucian never actually says those 3 words.
Mm-mm.
Emmett
Does
does.
he have to though?
Right at the end, but Lucian doesn't. No, he doesn't have to. Like, you can glean that he does love him, but still, if you're writing a
I'm
romance,
sure he did.
a very key passage, he doesn't say it. I'm pretty sure he doesn't.
He gives him the ring, and he says it in that note, but the note's not real.
The note's not written by him.
I think
I'm going through all my pink tabs now to see.
But the note is written in Lucian's handwriting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that we'll never know because maybe it was forged, but
Yeah, I think it was.
Maybe it could have been they forced Lucian to write it, or Lucian had like written it, but they found it and went,
maybe.
"Meh."
Yeah. But
It's,
So I think they probably
it's
forged
very-
one to Alta,
Yeah.
because she wouldn't know what Lucian's handwriting looks like.
Yeah. It's very. I think in especially the latter part where they're in what's it called, the Castleford. Then it just suddenly felt very naturalistic. I felt like I was in London, and I was like, oh, but what happened to the creepy dustiness on the moors and in the castle, and then I think it just became too. I don't know. It was.
I think like.
Yeah, Lucian was very. With his drinking and the marriage and stuff, he was such a sad character to read about, and I think I was always somewhat questioning that the romance with him and Emmett, it wasn't real for him. I don't know. I think that's part of a good story writing, isn't it? The fact that you can never.
I've just checked. He doesn't say it.
He doesn't say it.
No.
R.I.P.
I want a sequel.
But it's like I just remember something else that happens in the first section because like Seraph keeps going on about Emmett's going to be the greatest binder who ever lived because of his extreme binder-bound fever. Also, there's that bit where like the mob come, they try to burn it down, and Emmett he says he goes into a state where he doesn't know what happened, but it's it seems like he's called down this rain. But also, Seraph knows that the rain is coming before it ever does. And what's that all about? That never happens again.
Yeah. I thought it was Seraph.
Yeah.
I thought she was behind all of that, but I don't know.
I think, in my opinion, I might have this completely wrong here. There is a lot going on in this book, a lot. But I think because Bridget, the author, obviously she seemed to want it to be centered around the love story between Emmett and Lucian. So I don't know if maybe that's why we don't get any of the other ends finished, because it's these are just side tiny things that are happening in their life, and their life is the great love that is written between them. So although I agree it's very annoying that the family is never talked out again, I'd love to know what happened to his little sister.
I think Alta is.
And
I think she's alluded to.
Yeah, not in a lot of detail there. I think I said to you, I wanted more, even if it's just a paragraph or something.
Yeah, let me find it.
Carry
on.
I would have liked, I would have liked to know what the parents had done, and then you've got there are so many little, and as you said, De Havel never gets any repercussion for what he does to Seraph. You don't know what's happened to this poor girl that Lucian was supposed to marry and things like that. And I understand why, in the basis of the entire world in this book, revolves around Emmett and Lucian. So if the ending of that story doesn't have anything to do with Emmett and Lucian, you don't hear it because you only hear what is central to their relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
This book would have made an incredible duology if it had just been split into two and expanded on a bit more, particularly about the world and and all those little threads were like knitted together a bit more. Would have been like 6 stars.
But if she came back and did a sequel to it, it could be an incredible duology, like expanding on things that have been kind of left here. Because it's only been a couple of years since this came out. It only came out in 2019.
I thought that was what because there's another book that she's written, The Betrayal, with the very similar cover design.
But if I remember correctly, because I looked into it when I first finished this book, if I remember correctly, it doesn't have much to do with this one, but let me check.
No, it's not linked.
No, that's the impression I got as well. But I mean, going back to this as well, like I think it's one that would definitely, especially part 1, would be, for me anyway, worth the reread. Like now knowing how everything links together, like even though I knew kind of what was going to happen with Lucian and Emmett, like it would be interesting just to read that all over again and see, like, you know, knowing what I know now. I think I would probably enjoy part 1 more this, like, a second time round than I did the first time. But yeah,
I don't know, for the cozy cottagecore vibes, just like, oh yeah.
I did want it to end. I'll be honest, I did want another like paragraph or a couple of pages of them riding back to the little cottage in the moors, and then like starting to organize their lives there. I did want that.
That's all I wanted.
This is a bit that I think is alluding to Alta.
Oh, she found it.
It was page 353, if anyone's interested. And he's kind of, Lucian's in the bar and he's having a bit of a moment. And he's talking about Miss Pearl and her speciality. An engagement of at least 2 hours is required. So it's basically, I think, is it a whorehouse?
Yeah, it's a whorehouse.
And then he says, he reaches my cup, but the page is still floating in front of my eyes. I know Madam Howell's place is classy, relatively speaking, but I've heard of Miss Pearl and her preferences. In spite of myself, I can imagine the girl who must have read those instructions. I don't know any girls younger than Lisette, obviously Alta, but somehow I can picture her, gap tooth, her hair in a plait. She wore her hair in a plait. In my mind's eye, she walks up the steps of the door and tugs the bell pull. She's desperate and brave, but she doesn't know what she's doing. She's so guileless, it hurts, and it will hurt more when she opens the door and the door behind her. I think that's Is that like?
I thought it
sound like Alta.
I think that's an allusion to Alta.
I thought it might
remember
have
seeing
done
that.
too.
Yeah.
I thought it might have done too, but at the same time, I was like, well, is that actually what happened to her, or is it just like somewhere in his brain,
Possibly.
that he's like he's pictured something, and the only young girl his brain can think of.
Yeah.
No, I did.
Just the fact that she's described as gap tooth, and I think that is Alta.
Is that something of hers? Yeah, I think that's the only thing I could think of when I was reading. I was like, is he talking about how he's suddenly starting to come back to terms with his memory, and he's like, there's someone in my subconscious that I can picture, and it's like, okay, are we supposed to be thinking that she, like, the family's fallen apart, or she's so distraught about Lucian she's never got over it, unless she's bound too.
No, I don't think she's
bound. Not bound. Then, you know, so she's kind of lost her way a little bit, because, you know, she loses her love, she loses her puppy. What else she gonna lose? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was just a childhood like crush with Alta. I don't think she didn't love him like Emmett loved him.
Of course not. That was a passion.
Just Alta. Can we talk about Alta?
Yeah.
Yes.
I do not like her.
She gets annoying.
Does quite quickly. As soon as she throws herself into the frozen lake, it's like, what are you doing to yourself?
I put her up there with Kathy Earnshaw. That's how much I dislike her from Wuthering Heights. Like the main character, Kathy. That's how dislikable she is to me.
She's a brat.
Yeah, and Kathy is a brat. It's exactly the same way. If anyone's
how old is Alta?
She's like 15.
Admittedly, like,
I thought she was younger.
I do kind of understand. Maybe.
Oh no, she would be about 15, because she's like, I'm gonna marry her, but it's like.
Yeah, I was thinking because of like the time, it's kind of this magical, well, this normal / magical world is kind of set in. I kind of understand why she was trying to get her husband and stuff, because obviously that is the way it was there. But I was just like, Why are you throwing yourself into a frozen lake?
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. It's Cassie out on the moors in the rain, pining for Heathcliff, and it's just like, dude,
And
no, it's not worth it.
yeah, well, they never are. Oh, this is the wrong book. I think she's 16.
Yeah, I remember reading 15 or something. But in turn of the century, like early 1900s, late 1800s, this sort of thing is common. Like girls getting married at like 15, 16 and having kids by 17, 18. Like
She did feel younger. She'd feel like she felt like
mature.
what I would imagine Juliet from Romeo and Juliet sounds like. It's like, but I love him.
Yeah.
I love him.
Like
Can't do this to me. I love him. It's like, what's his last name? It's like,
Yeah. But I love him.
but I love him. But
It's like
she was like,
childhood
Like,
crush,
he
isn't it?
visited
Like,
me all of the time. Like, he was always here for me.
yeah, who do you think he's really visiting?
Mm.
Who did he dance more like?
She's only 15. She'll get over it.
There we go. Who did he dance more convincingly with at the turning?
Well, exactly. It's quite sad as well that books are made to be such a bad thing in this book. It's a weird
I
thing,
did want
because
to ask, that was something I wanted to ask about, like, how did you feel about binding and the idea in general of books being memories? Like, how
it
did you
didn't
feel
repulse
about
me
it?
like it repulsed them, for sure.
I found it really sad because books are literally like, I love them. I have so many. I have a problem. We're looking at my 10 copies of Wuthering Heights right now. Like, just the idea of books being like illegal or being thought to be evil, it just makes me sad
Mm.
because
I
I
think-
adore books.
Mm.
I adore like looking into, and I agree that every author puts a little bit of themselves into a book, and I do get that it's a very real thing that books can be like memory banks and memory storage, because you do put a little bit of you into your characters.
Mm.
So that was a really interesting take. But yeah, I think it's sad that they're viewed with such trepidation. And then by like the upper classes, so like by the Darnays and by de Havilland and Lord Lapworthy, they're viewed as commodities to be exploited and stored. And it's kind of like ivory or something like that, like very similar in the Victorian era, when you're getting trade of religious relics and artifacts. And as an archaeologist, that hurts me still. But things like that, it kind of has that sort of same feel to it.
They are the dementors of the Castleford land. You know?
Exactly. They suck the joy.
I think it is sad that that's the case, and I think again that's what I expected it to be, is that it makes such a thing about how Meredith is seen as a witch and she's seen as evil and her trade is evil, and everyone shakes their head at, you know, you don't go and see a binder. I thought that the fact that he was made out to be this, you're a born binder, this is who you are, like I'm going to teach you the ways, and he kind of, I thought, okay, so he's going to change the view of binding.
But in some ways, I like the fact that he didn't change the way that binding is viewed, because that's how change in society happens. It doesn't happen straight away from one person. It happens gradually. So I think if you looked at this, say, 100 years later in this timeline, it would be completely different. So I like that it wasn't just an overnight change, because that's not realistic.
No.
That's fair enough. I hadn't thought about it like that.
With like the way books are in the book, and like the way it's, I loved the way Serediff was about it, and how it's like, that book is for that person, we keep it safe, only they're allowed, like, it's theirs, we keep it safe for them, as they can't physically read it because it will cause their mind to explode or something. It's like,
I think it's just really painful for them. Like, they obviously got rid of these
So it's
memories
like,
for a reason, and
They
Sarah
physically can't read the pages. They just blur.
like, we keep these memories safe for these people, but whereas like it's like that, I'm like, oh, that's so gorgeous, that's lovely. But I think most of the people don't see what Serediff does. they see what people like de Havilland does, and all the fancy people who are like, yes, I sexually assaulted this person, please take away their brain, so then I can do it again.
And I guess as well, like, that the people who come at the beginning, the two girls, and then later on the mob arrive, and it's like, she's not my, I guess they don't like it because it has, well, they assume it hasn't happened to them unless they have forgotten that it happened to them. But I guess they're like, they see the different person who isn't the same as the one that they knew before as well. So maybe they're like, oh, well, I don't like the change.
And in a rural Christian society like that, especially in so like your Victorian period, people are very superstitious. So they're going to be wary of things that they don't understand. And at this point in history as well, if we're talking about the historical side of it, they're going to be superstitious of science and call it magic. They're going to be superstitious of superstitions and call it magic as well. It's just a very, very slippery slope. They're going to be very, very anti anything that they don't understand. And I think that's why the mob is such an important scene and such a key thing as well, because it also it leads into the idea of the rumor mill and the fact that this girl came to Cerridus to be bound because her father had raped her, which is horrific, and the fact that then somebody outside of that immediate family knows, and it could get out into the community and the scandal and things like that. So you've got that as well to factor in. So
yeah, real fun stuff.
It's a great book.
There's a lovely, happy, bright love story, but entwined with all of that, there's a whole bunch of rape, misogyny, and everything else you could imagine.
Victorian England.
And that scene in the tower where they're hiding and other people are there.
Yes, that scene is awful. If we want to discuss that scene out loud, I don't know, but that scene is awful.
Listening to it was like, it's like he's putting a lot of passion into these words. It's like, it was like, there was a lot of like, it's like, should we leave you alone? This is the guy reading.
I found it interesting that we never actually meet Piran Cooper. Like, we never see him talk to her or interact with her in any way other than that scene, or when he's just talking about her with Alta or someone else.
Yeah,
I don't know. That's quite interesting.
She's a passerby in the main story, and I do kind of like that because I've been chatting to Faye about this because we've got similar things in Carry On. In that there are characters there that are just literally passers-by to the main plot. And
I am extremely angry about.
You don't need to go into them. They are there to populate the world, but you don't really feel the need to want to go into them a bit more. They're there to populate, and it feels real in that the main character doesn't really cross paths with them that much, and they know that of them. They know that they're there.
I think she's a red herring to try and stop you thinking straight away that Emmett could be in love with Lucian, because you're like, oh, but I'm pretty sure at the beginning he was talking about crushing on this girl, Perrin, and what's her face. So maybe she's just kind of in there deliberately as a side character just to try and throw you off the scent, maybe.
But she's also like in like TV shows where you just see the characters in the background, like the extras. She's there to populate the world, and I like characters like that don't really have like a big play on the plot, but
they're there.
They are there, and it makes the world feel so much more populated and real and believable.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't have like a big play on the plot, but
it makes it more of a 3D world.
Yeah, the person down the road from me doesn't have a big play on my life, but they're still there. So
The whole neighbours always banging on things, but other than that, they're just there. Apart from making noise. We thought they'd moved out, but they keep being more noise. Like, their welcome mat is gone, their bikes from downstairs have gone, yet every now and again there's banging, and we're like, we don't understand. Anyway,
so renovating it?
Yeah, maybe it's the landlord.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But what was the other thing? There was the thing. I don't like the idea of binding in the fact that it means people are losing their memories, if that makes sense. Like, books are But like books, as you said, they're part of my escape when I'm unhappy with this world, which is why I end up reading books like The Binding and The Circus of Wonders. Because it's just an escape from the world we're in. So the idea of them being someone's memories because they're so painful that they can't remember them, or they have no money, so they've had to sell the memories of their kids and things like that.
That was painful to read.
I found it so upsetting that these things that are my happy place, are my go-to when I need comfort, are not comfort for someone else. There's someone else's way of forgetting the pain that has been inflicted on them, or their happy life because they need money at the end of it. And
I think I said this in my review, like the only reason I would use binding regularly like they do in like Castleford was so I could re-experience a book for the first time.
Yeah.
Like that is the only good thing I can see happening from binding.
See, I didn't look at it and think of it as, when everyone was so repulsed by it, I didn't actually see it as an awful thing. Does that make me awful?
No.
I was like, I thought this is quite, they've come to Cerridus for help. Like, something, it means that they're not completely brandishing this. I don't know. It was like, I need you to help me. Like, I can carry on with my life, but this part of my life is never actually lost. It's just you're keeping it safe for me. It's not all consuming. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it justifies Thingy's actions, Lucian's dad's actions at all. But
no, I agree with that. I think like the books that Cerridus has, I understand the need for them, and I understand because she does generally only take memories from the people in pain who really need it, like Emmett, like Lucian, like the girl whose father raped her, like those. I understand the need for those books. It's the ones where like with Nell, or with the families and things who've done it for money and stuff like that. It's those books. Awful. Those are the ones that like get me and upset me. Those are the ones that I'm like, oh, my happy place is someone else's, like their life almost. And people who have imagination who can write things on the page, that's fine.
I do love the guy who just gets all those embarrassing moments where like you accidentally call someone like who's not pregnant, you accidentally say, oh, congratulations on having a baby. It's like all those little embarrassing things. I love the guy who just gets them bound. It's like yes, can you take away my shame? Like, absolutely.
That would be me.
Janet and I were talking about whatever his face was. The Lord that was...
Oh, Lord Latworthy.
Yeah, I mean, apparently he's mentioned early on, but I don't remember it. But it just felt like she was suddenly rushing to tie up ends. And it was like, okay, this guy, he's going to hit me. Oh, I know, he's read my book. I know where the book is. And it was like, what? And then it just suddenly felt like that was such a quick, I need to finish the story. I need to wrap it up.
Yeah, I didn't like how the fact the book was found like that. I think I would have preferred it if they had gone back to the tower and the book had been there, if that makes sense. If they'd gone back to the little cottage in the moors, the book had been there, and then Lucian could decide to read it, burn it, or lock it away, or entrust it to someone. And it would have upset me if it had finished with Lucian just locking his book away, but I also think I would have understood it. I think that would have been a better ending than the wedding.
Yeah, I was super convinced it was all going to come back together when they went back to the cottage. I was like, okay.
I think that's what I wanted to happen, to be honest.
That's what I wanted to happen. But I did like that moment where it's like having like just that intrinsic thought in the back of your head, seeing someone look at you in a way where you go, you know my most intimate, darkest secrets, and you can just see it in their eyes. I love like that tiny moment, but it was like felt quite rushed. I would have loved it to have like gone back to them, found it at the bindery, and maybe like even if Lucian was like, I'm just going to lock it away, but then sort of started a new life with Emmett there, and like fell in love with Emmett all over again.
That would have been a cool plot. I thought that's where it was going at one point.
I didn't necessarily have a problem with how it, like with the Lord, was it Latworthy,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like Zoe said, like he's not really involved at all until like the day before the party, and he kind of makes a move on Emma, you know, and that whole thing. Like I think if he was around more and we see him more, and maybe if there's some kind of I don't know, if it just made more sense, I guess. Like then, you know, you'd be able to make the dots. Make the dots?
Yeah.
Connect the
More
dots.
If he's been a
subtler
presence more like de
hints.
Havilland.
And more subtler hints to him knowing, if that makes sense. Because
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
he makes it really obvious that he has the book. Like Lucian doesn't have to think that much about it, to be honest. Whereas, like, if they'd done it in more like subtle kind of hints, where more like dots and things were connecting over a few different pages, I think that would have been cool.
Yeah. And yeah, I've just found the quote like when Nori was saying like ending with them at the cottage in the marshes, when it said when they're stood together, really close together, and Lucian says that's the moment when I should move away, but I don't. I was just like, oh, and then yeah, they're in bed together. I think it would have been really, really satisfying to see him lock the book away and build this relationship back up from the ground.
Yeah.
So Lucian still being bound and Emmett unbound, and looking at this man that he loves and knowing that he loves him and he loves him back, and Lucian learning to trust him again from a really natural point of view. But that doesn't take away the fact that I still love the burning of the library at the end as well.
That's drastic.
That was dramatic. I was like, it's going to come down to burning a library down. I know this is going to happen, and I'm here for it. But yeah, I do definitely agree that it could have ended sooner, but it still doesn't take away from my 5 stars.
And I said as well to Janet at the end, I thought that it was going to come, because they sounded like they were talking about they were in somewhere. I was like, oh, it's gone full circle, and he's dragged them back to the ruins outside his house, and then it wasn't.
Yeah.
I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I do think it was like it was an organic ending in the sense it was like, okay, well then let's go. It was like, okay, great, cool. Like there's no like beautiful reunion of like, oh, I loved you from the start, and I can't believe it was
I don't think I would enjoy the book as much if they had that.
Yeah.
Reunion.
It was just like, okay, I remember it, and we're gonna go from here.
Yeah.
So I did
try and live our lives.
I liked that, but I think it was too just all of a sudden, oh yeah, I delivered that book in this massive binding business that I have, even though we don't know anything about your binding life. And then I don't know, and then nothing comes of the wedding either, and like what happens to Honor, and
I knew he'd leave her at the altar, and I was just like, yes, do it.
And then it's just so quick to like eradicate the Haviland as well. It was suddenly so easy, you know. It was like he seemed like he was going to be such a big part, you know, with Cerridus, and he like the reveal of him being her son came to nothing as well. There's just so much going on. I think maybe
I was more worried about Cerridus' book ending up all over the place.
Yeah.
I was really worried about that.
Cerridus was great. I loved her. R.I.P.
I was slightly disappointed when Emmett never said the lines, "You burnt my book, I get to burn yours." I was very disappointed he never said that. It was like, you are 2 seconds away from saying it, my friend. Just say it. Just say it. Full circle, just say it.
Are you sure? I thought Emmett burnt his own book.
No.
Emmett
Darnay threw it in the fire.
No, Emmett throws it in the fire because he doesn't want Lucian to have it.
Yeah.
I thought they struggled and it fell in the fire, but Lucian was the one who put it in there.
No, I think Emmett threw it in there.
Emmett threw it in.
Where was that in?
It is
You find it.
at that tab there.
Oh, there you go.
Must be misremembering. I was driving at the time.
There you go, don't
So punch
But I'm
up,
sure
punch
Emmett
up,
wouldn't
punch
have.
up.
I kicked aside the fire guard and pushed it into the grate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Emmett threw it in.
Emmett threw it in.
Ah.
Otherwise, that would have been a great line.
Because he already knows that if you burn the book,
You
get the
remember.
memories back. And he was just like, I want memories.
Because that was a pretty prominent line, wasn't it? Where he was like, what happened if the book's destroyed? And she goes, they remember. So I think that's...
Yeah, because he was like, they die, don't they? And it's like, no, they remember.
No, they remember. Which somehow sounds it makes it out, but it's there.
In some ways it is.
I don't know why I thought, like, maybe one of I drive my siblings places, so maybe one of them was talking at the time. My brain just went, Lucian has the book. It's like, oh no, now it's in the fire. Lucian in the fire. That's what happened.
That's fair enough.
Because I thought Emmett would, like, not want to throw it immediately in the fire. You just would have wanted it back. and then probably have tried to read it. But it's like, but now it makes sense that there was like
Bit of a tussle.
struggle.
I wanted to.
I need to reread this.
Yeah, you do.
Great
I
rereader.
There was the other thing I wanted to ask from when I spoke to Jess the other day was de Havilland, like, how did you feel about his death? Because obviously we're all unhappy that he didn't get the right, like, he didn't get tried and stuff for Sarah's death. It was just kind of, oh, he did it, but let's move on. But how do you feel about how he died in the end, like the bit in the alley with starting it off by saying that he was selling books, and then him in the alley in the fire and things like that? Just how did you all kind of feel about the way he met his end?
I was saying to Zoe, I felt it was quite a coincidence that Lucian's there like, yeah, I'm gonna get him, and then he just so happens to be passing the other two guys who work for his dad who are also on the same mission. It's just like, oh, okay, well, okay. Like, it just so happened to be at the same time.
What?
I don't know.
Right. My brain has come up with this new side canon for it. What I would have loved is for like people to start spreading rumors that he's making copies of books, and that like the truth that he's selling people's books and like he's doing all this illegal things, and then like a fancy mob form of all the fancy people to go kill him and like burn down his bindery, and he does the same thing that Serediff does when the mob comes to her, is he locks himself inside to try and protect the books. That would have been a glorious, beautiful full circle moment if that's what had happened. Yeah. But it didn't. It was just bonk him on the head, put him in an oven. There we go. Jobs are good. Yeah, but it wasn't even like we got to see it.
Yeah. It was a little bit kind of quick push. Yeah.
I mean, having read books set in this sort of period, you have like that sort of underground gang warfare going on in Victorian London and Victorian Edinburgh and things like that. Like The Way of All Flesh, for example, by Ambrose Parry, you've got this whole sort of subplot with underground individuals trying to get money back from one of the main characters, and they do just seem to be everywhere you go because they've got so many little kids running around as informants. They get paid
gutter snipe
and everything like that. So you've got Dodger running around coming back to Fagin and all that sort of stuff. So for me it wasn't that far-fetched that Acre was there when de Havilland was there, and the fact that we don't know how big Castleford is it like London size, is it York size, is it Edinburgh, like how big is this city, and is it even a city or is it a town? And it just, I actually felt bad for de Havilland because what Lucian says, isn't it, like it's not actually
not
what
wholly
he's doing.
true, yeah.
It's a half truth, or even it's a blatant lie, and this man dies because of it.
But at the same time, I suppose he deserved it for other reasons.
But it shows, for me, that's the sign of a good writer, that I can feel sorry for a villain when they die.
I think it just kind of rounded up whatever his name was, Acre.
Yeah.
You know, suddenly brought them back into play, and we're like, oh, they still exist, yeah. And maybe necessarily brings you back to remember, because it's a long book. You know, when you first meet them, it's way back when, it's early doors, so maybe it's just a way of kind of reminding you of everything to refresh your memory when it comes to the kind of the big reveals at the end and the big conclusion. They're not very nice people, though.
No.
Yeah. Fun times.
That much book in between Acre's appearances.
Oh, I thought there was more than that.
No, it's not.
I retract my point, sorry.
It's still a decent amount. That 287 to 3. It's about 100 pages. So a lot happens in 100 pages.
Well, yeah, that's true. Especially in this book. A lot happens.
Yeah, as we said at the beginning, the pacing of this book is a little bit weird in the fact that you have one part where nothing really happens apart from you find out kind of what binding is, and you don't really even find that out, to be honest.
It has a gorgeous cottagecore vibe, and it's all like
It's set up,
and then you got 2 parts where it's just like everything happens. And I don't I don't really know what I would have preferred, but I think I would have, like Zoe and Janet have already said, I think I would have preferred the first part to be a little bit more on the craft of binding, the craft of bookmaking, what it is, things like that. And then maybe, I don't know, Emmett finding his own book, we get that middle section, and then maybe he goes off and tries to find Lucian and things after that. But like, it's a very weird pacing for a book, I think, with the first like part just being very, very slow and kind of like your everyday bookbinding life, and then it suddenly becomes this epic romantic love story of so like just such importance that you just don't get back to the thing of the first part, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm kind of out of questions and things, so people just bring up stuff they want to discuss.
I do wish it went more into exactly what happens when you're binding someone. Like, because it's like, I touched her shoulder, and then all her memories came to me, and suddenly they're on a piece of paper.
Yeah, I mean, that could have happened with anyone he touched. So
yeah,
because Sarah just said you need to get them calm and everything, and we didn't really see.
They need to be like consenting, but like I don't know if like in that moment she had like properly said I consent to have these memories taken away. It's just sort of like she was very upset.
Like, when Emmett gets bound, I was going to say binded, but that's probably right.
Bound.
No, I was kind of like, it really is easy as just saying yes, I consent, even though he clearly doesn't. Like, I don't know. Part of me was like, oh, clearly there's this magical system. There must be a way that the binder knows. Maybe I don't know, but maybe not. But
I think what we would have known if they'd done more about the binding.
Yeah. Let's do it rather than.
I feel like this book needs to learn about the nuances of consent. Because consent under duress is not consent.
No.
I mean, I think it's.
I don't quite understand how the consent works, because as you said, him going in and saying yes, I consent to this, but like.
We should say in this instance, it's consent to be bound, not consent for everything else, because there's definitely consent for everything else.
Not all the time.
Well, not all the time, but between the main two,
there's
definitely consent every time.
Yeah, I think there was the subplot with Nell was quite unnecessarily harsh. I know the subplot was to show that people exploited the art of binding to do their due. So like whatever Mr. Man Nasty Hallivan, Darnay, is doing what he's doing and using binding as a way. And obviously they're not consenting to either of those things. But is it kind of the fact that they're not consenting to what's happened to them, that they're happy to get rid of those memories because that wasn't consent. So the very fact that what they're trying to get rid of, they hadn't consented to, it's kind of a unspoken consent because they didn't have power over what happened to them in the first place.
Yeah, it's a very good look at the Victorian working class and how little rights, much they lacked human rights and basic human decency towards them as well. They had no civil liberties, basically. They were.
You can tell that by the fact that, I mean, trigger warning, there's a suicide, and how brushed aside she is. The fact that they're just like, can you just get rid of this body and get rid of the bloodstains, please? It's an inconvenience to me.
Yeah, if you can't get rid of the stain, it's out of your wages, basically.
Yeah, and I think just the fact that Nell is treated as she's treated, and then obviously she's bound again, and it just sucks even more life out of her. And Lucian tries to help, and she can't, and then she hangs herself in the old Darnay Senior's office, and he couldn't care less. It's just like, well, okay, yeah. And I think there was so much about this rug and the stains on it. I was like, just get rid of it.
But I think that also goes to show how little they respected the maids as well, the working class, because they are
the original stains on the rug were from Emmett collapsing, not from Nell.
Yeah, that was his, wasn't it? I think it's just the binding, the fact that it's all to do with Emmett. He's been bound against his will, and now he's binding against Tara will.
Yeah.
But at the
But then
same
doesn't
time,
he
she would be happier to lose those memories, whereas he wasn't happy to lose his memories.
doesn't he ask her if it's what she really wants or something like that?
I think
So,
so.
yeah.
And then he
It's just-
just is like, oh sorry, and then does it by accident, I guess.
Yeah, he doesn't mean
Yeah,
to,
see,
but because she's in that trance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, he's not sitting down at that point, is he? I thought he stood up.
I can't
Because
remember.
you both need to be sitting down. It's like, what are the rules?
Exactly. That's the
I
thing that's the thing that confused me most about Niall's thing is the fact that he was just like, okay, you can go now. We'll just tell them it's all done, and then he pats it, and then it happens. Then it's like, well, that's not really consent from either party.
Yeah.
The way I read it was that she was in that binder's trance because he was
Yeah.
so calm and it just naturally exudes from him.
Yeah.
So that all he had to do was touch him. You're saying about the fact that he stood up. I think the only reason they say that is because it's dangerous to be stood up when it happens, because he's all thrown off kilter afterwards because of all the memories washing over him.
It's quite symbolic, isn't it, that in the Darnay household, they keep going back to these closets they've got everywhere, which are full of trinkets, and it's quite symbolic that they're keeping all of these things that mean something to them locked away in a cupboard, like everything that means something to their family. And they keep going back to it, like, oh, this treasure closet with this in it, and I kept looking at this in the cupboard, and it was like, wow, how very symbolic, the fact that you are keeping all these things in your home, like you're stealing the memories of everyone. It's very
Keeping part of you in the closet as
well.
well.
Exactly.
Good.
I feel like I've really ripped this book apart. I didn't mean to.
No, it's good. It's really interesting because I saw it when I read it. I still really enjoyed it. Don't get me wrong. I still give it my 4.5 things. But that's why I like our book club, because like you all say things that I would not have considered and would not have thought about. Like my main criticism of the book was the fact that I didn't like how it ended and that I didn't like how slow the first start was. But then like listening to everyone else talk and hearing everyone else's views, you're kind of like, oh, hang on a minute. I didn't think about this side of it and this side of it and these things and this thing. And it's just, yeah. So it's good that you ripped it apart in a way, because I got to see parts of it that I wouldn't have noticed.
It's like me. I still give it the 5 stars purely for the relationship. Like that's what my 5-star is.
Yeah.
I would give it, like, writing overall, I'd probably give it for pacing a 3, but beautiful writing a 4.5.
Yeah.
But the relationship is what takes it to that 5-star for me, because I love seeing like relationships like that play out. I'm a sucker for a love story.
You are.
Yeah.
And I wanted more murder.
That's quite fair. I kind of see where you're coming from.
I think I just wanted more of a mystery element, like
like
who done it kind of thing, but also what is mine, and also some love on the side.
I think that's the thing about this book, and like my main conclusion from what everyone's saying is like the blurb, because the blurb gives you so little. You have such a. That's why I don't read the blurb of book club books. I've decided this is the reason, not because I'm lazy and have to read them anyway, so don't see the point. So it's like the blurb gives you so little, so you form such a story in your head already. As soon as you go into it, like the preconceived idea you have, like I don't think anyone can read the blurb that this book is, or the synopsis of this book, and go, yes, it's going to be a dramatic love story between Emmett and Lucien, and the entire like the 2/3 of the book is going to center primarily around their relationship, the fact that they were bound, and they want them that Emmett remembers and Lucien doesn't, and then to start you've got it the other way around. Like I think that's the thing about this book. You get so little from the blurb, your idea in your head can be formed so strong that as soon as you get to the page, it's like, well, this isn't what I wanted. That's why I wanted to know what everyone thought about it before they read it at the start.
I keep coming up with other versions of this book, even though I really do like this book. I keep coming up with other versions of it in my head. Another version is it's also first bit exactly the same. Then it gets all like bit more suspenseful with him going to de Havilland's, and sort of like he finds out that de Havilland is selling like books of people, and he knows it's like he learns like the laws. He knows it's illegal. Then he finds his own book, and through some things he gets unbound. That's when he remembers like Lucien Darnay, but Lucien Darnay has been there, and now he has to juggle with the fact he's trying to take down de Havilland from the inside, but also with all these new memories of like being in love with this person, and like, does he focus on his current quest of like trying to sort all this out, or does he like drop everything and go with his heart? That's what I want, and it's like, this book is technically not that, but it is that, and it's all confusing.
Fan fiction, right?
Don't get me. I will write so much fan fiction. Like,
I think part of me was kind of hoping. I mean, not that I'm sinister or something, but I was kind of hoping that at the end of it, Lucian was going to be a bit of an idiot and actually was just playing Emmett along. That would have been like a big twist to me. I've been like, but just because I'm not one for, I don't know, happy endings, I'm a bit of a cynic. And I like kind of those twists and turns, and I think that would have been something so crazy that, you know, he's bound because it ends up being for his own protection, because they saw that he fell so beautifully in love with Lucian, but they actually knew he was playing and they didn't want him to get hurt, so they bound him to forget about him, to save him from heartache. Then obviously he gets the book and he's like, oh, I loved you, and then he's like, but I never loved you, and then he's got to go through heartbreak, and you're like, oh no. That would, for me, and then you're like, and then you killed Starless, and oh my gosh, and I think that would have been really cool. And then Lucian could have fallen in love with him at the end, but by that point, Emmett's like, no thanks.
I think my main two main issues should have ended at the cottage on the moors, and that just should have been where it ended. And yeah, would have been happy with that. Didn't need the wedding, didn't need any of that stuff. But the other thing that bothered me is like, we only get a tiny glimpse of the world from Lucian's point of view from the binding, and I would have liked to have known more of what happened when Emmett obviously got bound and got sick, and then you hear little bits about Lucian tried to go back, Lucian got beat by his father and things like that. I would have liked to have known more about that in a way. Maybe that's my sadist part, wanting to know the sadness that he had to go through, the to get him to the point where he's like, no, I can't remember this either. Now, if he can't remember it, if it's gone for him, then it has to be gone for me. I would have liked to have seen more how it led up to that decision, the decision that is one of the kind of main parts of the first section, if you will.
Also, something that's just occurred to me is, apart from part 2, which is really just a flashback, we're always in the head of someone who has been bound.
That is true.
Interesting point. I wonder why that was. I mean, I don't really wonder why, but like, especially in the third part, I was expecting it to be all Emmett, and then he's like, "Oh, I've woken up, and now I need to make sure Lucian remembers these things or whatever." But
yeah, it's interesting. Never actually not in a unbound person.
No, you never see it through the eyes of someone.
Oh yeah, because as soon as Emmett's not bound, it's not from his point of view anymore.
Yeah.
Janet.
Interesting.
See, that's why I like this. Never would have considered that at all.
Well, I say some smart things sometimes.
You've got strictly in 10 minutes.
Yeah. So, has anybody else got anything else they would like to discuss? Because as Zoe has very aptly mentioned, Strictly Come Dancing results are on in 10 minutes.
No?
Priorities.
I mean, that doesn't bother me as such, but
not that I can think of.
I know.
And
last time when we did this, I literally made it back downstairs in time to watch the dance off, and I walked into the room and who's the dance off. My husband went, guess. I guessed correctly. We went into the dance off, and I was like, oh, cool, I've seen all I need to see.
Oh yeah. But yeah, we'll leave it there then. Like I say, I'm so glad that I finally read this book. I absolutely adored it. Good choice, Mariette. We have one more choice.
I'm glad that everyone enjoyed a part of it, even if it wasn't the entire thing. I'm glad that everyone at least enjoyed like one part of it. There was something for everyone there.
I mean, I definitely want to reread it, so
yeah.
But maybe not right now. Maybe in a year or two.
I get that. I think it was 2 years since the first one. I threw that by accident. Sorry.
We have one pick left for 2021, which I believe Nori has in their hands, which is Bone Crow's Moon, is it?
Yes.
I
accidentally got the fancy fairy loot version.
I know, I'm very jealous.
Got it like
so
Amazon second hand. You never know what you're going to get.
This is Grace's pick. This is going to be our December pick. So you'll be seeing this after the live stream has been recorded. So if you want to go and read it, go read it and then watch our live stream back. It's YA fantasy, again, star-crossed lovers and all sorts. So
Oh,
Done a
is
good job.
it? I just assumed it was another crime book.
nope.
I
have no
haven't
idea
bought
what
it
it's
yet. I
about.
don't know
I haven't-
anything about it. It's just I assumed that
I
she was.
haven't even read the blurb. Probably not going to.
I've
Ooh,
got
going
the whole
blind.
duology, so I'm really excited to read it. So yeah, that's going to be our December book club pick. So make sure you are subscribed, have notifications turned on, and yeah, when we come back for our January book club pick for 2022, that will be our first live show in a while. So that will be Janet's pick, which is 1,000 Splendid Suns by Khaled
I'm so
Hosseini.
excited.
We are putting together our 2022 roster. We are nearly there. We're over halfway filled, or just about halfway filled for the whole year. So
I
as
think
soon as we
I
have
have
that,
my September pick, but I haven't fully
Awesome.
decided. I don't have my July pick because I still haven't found a book that I want to read that is not a fantasy book. Apparently, I'm very bad at that.
So yeah, as soon as we've got the full roster, we'll put up a graphic and we will put out all of the book club picks. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. We will see you all next time. Stay safe and keep reading. Bye bye.